Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking something that most developers treat as a total chore, reading technical documentation, and we are completely reframing it. By the time we wrap up here, you're going to see exactly why the manual isn't just a boring PDF. It's actually your absolute secret weapon for accelerating your career in the IT insurance sector. Let's dive right in and see why this matters so much.
$18 billion. That's the projected size of the global property and casualty insurance software market by the year 2029. To put that into perspective, it's growing massively from its current $13.3 billion valuation. We are talking about a rapidly expanding ecosystem here, and sitting right smack in the middle of all that incredible financial growth is Guidewire software.
So that brings us to the million-dollar, or I guess $18 billion question, right? What truly separates an average developer who just sits and writes code from a highly sought-after, highly paid Guidewire architect? Now you might be thinking it's just years of experience or maybe some natural coding genius, but actually it's a lot more specific than that. It all comes down to one key thing to unlock that top-tier success, and that is exactly what we are decoding today.
To get us there, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the insurance tech boom. Then we'll reveal the ultimate cheat code, followed by navigating the arsenal, the cloud migration catalyst, tools and best practices, and finally, your roadmap to mastery.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the insurance tech boom, and a look at this trillion-dollar ecosystem.
The sheer scale we are dealing with here is just massive. Guidewire isn't some niche little software. It powers over 570 property and casualty insurers across 43 different countries. It literally manages trillions of dollars in premiums and claims every single year. Trillions. Because of this massive global footprint, thousands of professionals are employed by global system integrators. We're talking big names you definitely know: Accenture, Cognizant, Capgemini, Infosys, all specifically to deliver these projects to carriers worldwide. So the demand for professionals who really understand this platform, it has absolutely never been higher.
Moving right along to Section 2, the ultimate cheat code and getting beyond tribal knowledge. At the core of all this success is Guidewire Documentation. This is the complete set of official guides, API specs, and blueprints. Look, in the tech world, it's super tempting to just rely on tribal knowledge, right? Which is basically just bugging the senior developer on Slack until they tell you what to do. But on massive 18 to 36-month projects with dozens of developers, that creates pure chaos. Actually, scratch that. It's worse than chaos. The official documentation acts as your single source of truth. Mastering it prevents multi-million-dollar project failures, ensures you aren't making easily avoidable misconfigurations, and dramatically speeds up your velocity. Reading the manual is, quite literally, your absolute best risk mitigation tool.
So how do we handle all this info? That brings us to Section 3, navigating the arsenal to find the exact right tool for the job.
You absolutely do not need to read this massive library cover to cover all at once. Top-tier teams map specific documentation directly to their roles. For example, if you're a configuration developer, you practically live in the configuration guide for UI screens and Gosu, which, by the way, is Guidewire's proprietary scripting language. Or if you're a database administrator, you consult the data model to understand entity relationships and the ORM before you ever write a single line of code. Just understanding which document type to pull up and when is a superpower in itself that really accelerates project delivery.
Now, let's narrow in on integrations, because let's face it, that's often the absolute most complex part of any project. Modern deployments run heavily on REST APIs using JSON and OAuth 2.0, but you also need to understand legacy SOAP web services. Then you've got Kafka for asynchronous, event-driven messaging. But here's the real game changer. The integration gateway documented for the cloud platform includes over 290 pre-built technology partner integrations. No way, right? If you just know how to read the documentation for this gateway, you save literally hundreds of hours of custom development.
Which tees us up perfectly for Section 4, the cloud migration catalyst, and the massive industry shift happening right now.
There is a very stark contrast happening in the industry today. It's like night and day. We're moving from the old world of traditional on-premises deployments with their static infrastructure and those painful multi-year upgrade cycles straight into the new frontier, the Guidewire Cloud Platform, or GWCP. Over 150 insurers have already made this shift. GWCP runs entirely on modern DevOps principles like Kubernetes, Docker, and managed SaaS. And most importantly, it features continuous quarterly upgrades. This means cloud documentation isn't just nice to know, it's mandatory to keep up with the continuous release cycle. Honestly, cloud expertise is going to be your biggest career differentiator through the end of this decade.
Okay, Section 5, Tools and Best Practices. How do the pros actually do this day to day?
The reality is that reading the official documentation is really only half the equation. The other half? Creating your own project documentation. High-performing teams use the Guidewire portal for the official manuals, for sure, but they pair it with tools like Swagger and Postman to create living, testable API documentation. They use Confluence for internal wikis to capture all those lessons learned, and they tie every single documentation change to version control in Git and traceability in Jira, the whole shebang. This creates a shared language across the full project team.
And finally, the moment you've been waiting for. Section 6, Your Roadmap to Mastery. Let's unlock the actual payoff for all this hard work. Looking at these salary tiers from the Indian consulting ecosystem, there is a direct, undeniable link between technical mastery and your earning potential. A fresher starts out between 4 to 7 lakhs per annum, but as you master integrations and become a technical lead, your value absolutely skyrockets. And at the top, the Guidewire architect role commanding 30 to 50 plus LPA. So what separates the 7 LPA developer from the 50 LPA architect? It is exactly what we've been talking about, the ability to synthesize multiple, complex documentation types into scalable, secure architectural decisions. Documentation mastery is quite literally the key to these top tiers.
So how do you actually get there? If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, take a breath. Here is your actionable, step-by-step game plan. First, you've got to learn the P&C Insurance fundamentals. You just can't build what you don't understand, right? Second, dive into the InsuranceSuite overview and start with Policy Center since it's the most complex and well-documented. Third, master that goes-to programming language and your Java basics. Fourth, explore the API and integration documentation and fire up Postman to test them out. And lastly, get hands-on project experience. Applying this knowledge is the absolute fastest way to turn reading into a highly paid, practical skill.
To wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this one provocative thought. The depth of your documentation knowledge will define the ceiling of your impact on every single project. The manual is not a chore, it's a blueprint. So, will you keep relying on tribal knowledge, or are you ready to read the blueprint and smash through that career ceiling? I hope this sparks some serious curiosity for you to dive into the docs. Thanks for decoding this incredible